Hello, I'm Geoff Chapman, VP at eCom Scotland. Our podcast today is with our learning technology consultant, Judy Boxham. It's Learning at Work Week 2016. This year the theme is Connect, so we thought we'd have a look at the challenges of connecting the workplace, where there's a changing age profile. In 2010, the legislation on compulsory retirement was lifted. 6 years on, and now we begin to see the effects of this and the rising the state pension age, as there are more people still in employment over the age of 60 than there have ever been. So, what do you think that those involved with workplace learning need to consider, Judy?
There's some quite different expectations within the age groups that there are. Younger employees tend to have a culture of sharing and engaging, which they've gained through social media. And they're more able to sort of dip in and dip out of learning. They're more used to sort of that butterfly culture of just doing things for short periods of time. Older learners tend to expect things to be given to them in a prescribed way and to sit down and do things in large chunks of time more. So there's quite different sort of expectations on design there. But for both groups, what needs to be defined is what they are expected to do quite clearly so that it makes it nice and easy for them to understand. Alongside that, there's a potential of how long it is since older workers have actually done any learning. So it may be that you need to support and coach them to get them back into the idea of how they actually manage their time and complete some learning. There's also different abilities on digital technologies. There tends to be an assumption quite a lot of the time that young people know how to use technology and they know everything about it. Unfortunately, it's not always true. They know how to use it in certain niches, so particularly things like mobile phones, which are used mostly for social purposes. So there needs to be a transfer sometimes of how you use it for learning, particularly in the workplace, to get the most out of it, and not just assuming that people know how to do that. Onboarding new employees brings another challenge as well, because you've got older people who may be stepping down from quite responsible positions and going to work somewhere else, where they're going and assuming something which is part-time and less responsible, and ending up with a young person trying to show them the ropes. Now, this can cause tensions, obviously. Using things like e-learning can be a way to get past this, because then you can deliver the training in a much more neutral way for them.
So, if you're saying that the way that age groups respond to learning differently, how can we accommodate that?
It's that thing. It's very difficult to be all things to all people. If you've ever bought anything that says one size fits all, you know it doesn't. So looking at things like considering formats, can you provide the same thing in a few different formats so that people have choice over which way they actually access it? Some people like to watch videos, some people actually like to read a transcript of things. So having those two formats makes a big difference to how easy it is for somebody to actually get into that learning. Making interfaces as simple as possible to use. Making it obvious. If you think all those apps and things on your mobile phone, nobody's told you how to use them. You don't get an instruction manual. They're just obvious. So we need to think about making interfaces to learning in the same way as that. So that suits the younger generation of learners. But alongside that, if you make it easy to access and obvious what you're doing, it's going to be easier for older learners to learn how to use the interface and make use of it. Use neutral language when you're actually designing things. Think about using terms like select the green tick or red cross rather than click on the red or green button. 8% of men are colourblind. Well, it's only about 0.5% of women. But, even then it makes it easy. And people with vision difficulties of other kinds as well, it makes it easier for them to use.
Are there any other factors we need to consider when designing, particularly e-learning, for an older population?
Well, unfortunately, as we get older, our senses tend to sort of change rather. I know my eyesight is nowhere near what it was when I was in my 20s. Particularly sort of around the age of 40 to 50, people's eyesight tends to undergo a major change and distance vision tends to go. And people don't always recognise that and go and get the prescriptions that they need to help them read. So thinking about eyesight really helps, making sure that fonts are big enough to read, that you've got good contrast, and that really makes a big difference for lots of people. Your hearing changes, you tend to lose a lot of the higher frequencies. So thinking about if you're getting somebody to record voices and sound, not having sort of very high-pitched speakers or high-pitched sounds involved in it so that it sort of suits more hearing ranges. Memory function can go. Yeah, I'm always got the shops and forgetting what I went there for. But making that interface easy to use so that you don't have to remember, I need to go there, 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 and there to do that. So lowering the number of clicks, it appeals to everybody. It makes the job easier. Again, it's just about making it easy for everybody. And it also fits in with the joint aches and pains. Making things that are short for people to access so they don't necessarily need to sort of sit in one position or be in one place for too long. And thinking about sort of clicking through, as older people tend to get maybe sort of the arthritic fingers and things like that. Not having too many clicks again really helps them.
That's really interesting. So what do we do? What do we need to do to design online learning to be as accessible by as many users as we possibly can? What do we need to do?
Think about having low learning curves. It's that interface that you see on your iPad, on your mobile phone. It's easy. You know what things are going to do. Not having too many clicks to get through to things so that all the functionality that you're going to have in a learning management system is actually obvious and you can access it from one or two sort of levels. Think about having short bursts of learning so people can just dip in and out as it fits with time. A lot of places are time pressured now, so having short bursts really suits them. Make sure that you have good contrast on text and background, that you use fonts that are easy to read. Sans serif fonts are far easier on the eye when you're actually reading off a screen than those with serifs. Make sure you can have it so the text can be enlarged, so if people need to sort of zoom in, it's easy to do that. And alongside that, make sure that you don't have to sort of scroll left and right too much or have buttons and things disappear off the screen and not be able to access them. If you're going to have videos, try and get transcripts of them to go alongside it so that if people don't want to watch the video or can't watch the video, that you then sort of give them the transcript to fit with it. And try and make interfaces responsive so your learners have the choice of what kind of device they're actually going to access it off. Not everybody uses a laptop. Some people, particularly if they're out in the field, may end up having to use something like their mobile phone to access it.
So here's a question which I'm pretty sure you've got a good answer on, but by doing all this, will that not just spoil the design for other users?
That's always been an argument about designing to be inclusive and accessible. But if we think about it, we're also trying to design then that will suit people who work in noisy environments. If everything's done as an audio and you're working somewhere that's really noisy. I mean, when we first tried to connect this morning, Geoff, there were people in the room behind you talking quite loudly.
Absolutely.
So, that makes a big difference to them. Some places have poor lighting, so making sure that good contrast is there helps people like that. We've got women who may be returning to work or single parents who've got to care for children. So they're working part-time and they need to dip in and out of learning while looking after children. So short bursts suit them particularly. And then people who aren't in traditional spaces where they can access maybe a laptop screen or a computer screen. So they're working off different devices. Our working patterns are changing massively from what we expected 20 years ago. So trying to design in a more inclusive way is bringing in that facility for people to be able to learn in lots of different places at the different times and when it suits them. Rather than looking at it as modifying to add access for a few more people, what we need to do is design and deliver learning so it can include as many users as possible.
That's really interesting. Judy, thank you for your time today. If you're interested in learning more about making your learning inclusive, then visit our website, ecomscotland.com, and you can contact our team directly through there. Thanks for listening. See you on the next eCom Scotland podcast.